View. Introduction. What are the benefits to me? Get some sound and useful guidance to help you navigate the winding and often difficult path that is your life. In the legend of Pinocchio, a small puppet receives his wish. He is freed from the strings that had been controlling his life, and he is given the opportunity to live as a real child who is completely autonomous. But Pinocchio didn't grasp that this also meant facing all of the perils of real life, as well as the difficult lessons that may be learned through honesty, friendship, and family. He thought that being a genuine boy meant never having to face these challenges. The challenge of discovering one's place in the world, as depicted in numerous well-known myths, fairy tales, and religious parables, is often portrayed as a struggle to strike a balance between order and chaos, the familiar and the exotic, or security and adventure. Well-known examples of such stories include Pinocchio. To this day, historical books are passed down and reread, along with the works of ancient thinkers like Socrates and Aristotle, because people have a deep-seated need to find a set of universal principles and guidelines that might provide their lives with significance. And these are the topics that author Jordan B. Peterson considered while producing a new list of 12 such principles to assist contemporary people in navigating the chaos of today's modern times. You will learn something new in only a few moments. What lobsters have to teach us about having faith in ourselves. How the lotus flower may teach us about the importance of finding purpose in our lives, and what lessons about human nature may be learned from youthful skateboarders. Key point 1. Hierarchies are a common facet of life in societies around the world, so give yourself an advantage with good posture. You must be familiar with the expression the pecking order, don't you think? But do you have any idea where it first surfaced? When the Norwegian naturalist Thorleif Skjelderup was researching barnyard chickens in the 1920s, he realized that there was a distinct hierarchy among these birds. He got the idea for this classification system from his observations. The ones at the top of the hierarchy were the ones that were the healthiest and strongest, and they were the ones that always got to peck first when the chicken feed arrived. The weakest birds, whose feathers were falling out, were sent to the bottom of the pile, where they were only allowed to pick at the crumbs that were left over. This sort of pecking order is not unique to chickens, rather, it is a feature that is naturally present across the whole animal kingdom. For instance, whether they are living in the wild or being reared in captivity, lobsters will engage in fierce competition for the safest and most advantageous places to take refuge. Researchers have discovered that the victors and losers of competitive confrontations have distinct chemical balances in their brains compared to those in the middle of the competition. The proportion of serotonin to ectopamin in the brains of winners will be higher than that of losers, who will have a lower ratio of serotonin to ectopamin in their systems. These levels may even alter the posture of lobsters. Victors will have higher serotonin levels, which will result in them being more nimble and erect, whereas losers will have higher ectopamin levels, which will result in them being stiff and curled up. This difference will play a role in future encounters, as the lobsters that are standing straight will look larger and more menacing than the ones who are tense, which will cause the tense ones to continue to behave submissively. You may have predicted correctly that human societies exhibit hierarchies and cycles of winning and losing that are very similar to one another. Studies have indicated that those who are in the clutches of drunkenness or depression are less inclined to engage a competitive environment. This merely promotes greater inactivity, which in turn continues to reinforce prolonged poor self-esteem and melancholy. On the other hand, those who are currently riding a winning run typically project an arrogant and self-assured body language, which might assist them extend their current winning streak. We humans are always comparing ourselves to one another, and for some reason, we tend to link a person's IQ with the level of physical prowess. Lobsters do the same thing. If you want to give yourself an edge, the first guideline to follow is to establish the posture of a winner by holding your head up and striking the stance of a victor. Key point 2. Care for yourself with the same tenderness you would a loved one. If your dog were ill and the veterinarian recommended that it take medication, you wouldn't question the advice of the physician and then fail to complete the prescription, would you? Despite this, around 1/3 of patients don't follow the treatment plans that their physicians recommend for them, which begs the question: why do we take better care of our dogs than we do of ourselves? The fact that we are always aware of our own shortcomings contributes to our feelings of self-loathing, which, in turn, can drive us to inflict unneeded pain on ourselves and give us the impression that we are not deserving of experiencing happiness. As a result, we worry more about the well-being of others than we do about ourselves. This notion that humans are unworthy may be traced back to the biblical account of Adam and Eve's banishment from the Garden of Eden, which occurred at the very least 6,000 years ago. In this allegory, Adam and Eve stand in for all humans, and they are deceived by a snake into eating the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The serpent's goal is to corrupt them and make them sin. It is said that mankind have been permanently tainted with evil because they have followed the advice of the serpent. It is possible to interpret the story of the Garden of Eden in a number of different ways. One interpretation is that it is not just individuals like us who are tainted, rather, the entire world is tainted. This interpretation can make us more self-conscious about the evil that resides within us, and it may also contribute to the feeling that we do not deserve good things. Both the humans and the snake in the garden represent the inherent combination of order and chaos that exists in the natural world. There is a bright side and a dark side, yet both sides include a bit of the other within them, and neither side can exist without the other. This duality of nature can also be found in Eastern philosophy, and it is symbolized in the two sides of the yin-yang symbol. In this circumstance, striking the right balance between light and dark is the key to achieving harmony. One should make an effort to avoid going too far in either direction, in order to maintain this equilibrium. For instance, if a parent were to try to keep their child from being exposed to anything that they deemed to be evil, they would be doing nothing more than substituting that chaos with the tyranny of too much order. To put it another way, it is pointless to strive for perfection in one's behavior. This brings us to the second guideline, which is to treat yourself with the same level of care that you would give to a loved one. Take care of yourself first and foremost, but realize that fighting the chaos is a battle that cannot be won. Try to act in a way that is beneficial to you, rather than simply focusing on what will make you happy. It's possible that when you were younger, you didn't enjoy doing things like brushing your teeth or wearing mittens, but these are activities that should be carried out. You have reached an age where you are responsible for figuring out the objectives that will help define who you are, and the path you wish to pursue through life. After that, you will discover the methods that you have to follow, as well as the activities that are most suitable for you to perform. Key point 3. The wrong companions can drag you down, so choose your friends wisely. One of the author's boyhood buddies has remained rooted in his northern Canadian city of Fairview, Alberta throughout his whole life. Instead of leaving, he decided to remain in the area, which led to his becoming associated with the town's other undesirables. The author would go back to his hometown every once in a while to visit his buddy, and each time he did so, the gradual and depressing decline of his friend's health grew more obvious. What was once the possibility of youth has evolved into the anger of age. It was made very plain to the author that his friend was being held back in life and brought down by a group of people who were up to no good. And this is the kind of thing that may happen to anyone at any time in any location. When an underachiever is placed on a team with great achievers, a dynamic similar to the one described above has the potential to play out in the workplace. It's possible that the manager will believe that this will lead to the difficult employee picking up positive behaviors from the other employees. But research has shown that the reverse is more likely to occur, and that the poor behaviors will start to spread, bringing everyone's performance down with them. Because of this, the third guideline is to ensure that you surround yourself with people who are supportive, since these are the types of friendships that are capable of bringing about good change. It is neither selfish or snobbish to be selective in the people you keep as friends, it is a sensible choice. Friendships that are encouraging and supportive go both ways. When you need a pick-me-up, they will be there for you, and if your buddy needs aid to recover from a failure or make some progress, you will be there for them. This dynamic may both foster success on an individual level, and, when used within a team setting, can lead to significant societal achievements. When the author left Fairview to attend college, he became involved with a community of like-minded people. These people assisted one another not only in their academic pursuits, but also in many other endeavors, such as the establishment of a thriving student union and the publication of a student newspaper. You'll know you have wonderful friends when they won't put up with you wallowing in pessimism. They want what's best for you, which is why they'll push you to pull yourself together and get your life back on track. Key point 4. Progress is made by comparing yourself to your past achievements, not to others. There was a time when it was possible to succeed despite competing with fewer competitors in a smaller environment. But in this day and age, even the idea of a local community has been rendered obsolete by the widespread availability of the internet. Because we are all a member of the same global society these days, it doesn't matter where you are, there will always be someone who is more accomplished than you. This brings up the topic of being critical of one's own actions. Now, it is essential for a person to be critical of themselves because, if we weren't, we wouldn't have anything to aim for, no incentive to improve ourselves, and our lives would swiftly lose all of its significance. The human predisposition to view the present as lacking and the future as promising much more is, thankfully, a trait that is shared by all humans. This propensity exists for a purpose, and that reason is that it assists us in maintaining the motivation to go forward and take action. Self-criticism, on the other hand, may become rather unpleasant when it focuses entirely on making comparisons between oneself and others. When something like this takes place, we very rapidly lose track of our progress. In the first place, this causes us to think in a binary fashion, as though we have either been successful or unsuccessful. Because of this, we are unable to see the gradual gains that are frequently inconsequential, yet are significant all the same. Comparisons cause us to become hyper-focused on a particular facet of our life, and to exaggerate its significance, which in turn causes us to lose sight of the bigger picture. For illustration's sake, let's assume you're looking back over the last year, and realize that you weren't as productive at work as some of your contemporaries were. You can have the sudden experience of feeling like a complete and utter failure. If you were to zoom out and look at all the many elements of your life, though, you could notice that you have made some significant changes in the quality of your relationships within your family. Because of this, the fourth guideline is that you should never assess yourself based on how you stack up against other people, but rather on what you have accomplished in the past. In addition to keeping you going forward, comparing your present outcomes to those of the past will do the same. If you start to believe that you are unbeatable, this should serve as a warning sign that you need to improve your ability to take calculated risks and set ambitious objectives for yourself. Consider yourself a house inspector whenever you do a progress check on what you've been working on. This necessitates taking an all-encompassing perspective and classifying each issue according to its nature. Is it a cosmetic or a structural fault? Make a note of the items that need to be changed before you provide your stamp of approval. Because of the comprehensive nature of this method, it is probable that you will be kept so busy focusing on yourself that you will be oblivious to how you compare to others. Key point 5. It is a parent's duty to raise a responsible and kind child. If you have ever witnessed a situation in which parents choose to ignore their misbehaving child, you may have found yourself wondering whether or not the parents are being cunning by allowing the youngster to wear himself out rather than intervening. The age-old dispute between nature and nurture, as well as varying ideas on the types of instincts we are born with, are two of the primary factors that have contributed to the evolution of parenting styles throughout the course of time. In the 18th century, there was a common view that claimed our prehistoric predecessors were kind, gentle, and childlike. This theory was supported by the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who popularized it in his time. They said that the corrupting impact that civilization has had on us is to blame for a long history of conflict and violence. But in our day and age, we have a deeper awareness of the reality that individuals are truly born with violent inclinations, and that they need to learn how to become kinder, gentler, and more civilized adults. After all, you probably have a mental image of how aggressive children may be in a play area. In comparison, the majority of businesses are a vision of peace and quiet. According to the author, it is truly up to the parents to make sure that their naturally aggressive child learns how to be a well-adjusted adult. This takes us to the fifth guideline, which is that parents need to be more than a buddy, they need to create a responsible and likable human being. Because no one enjoys playing the role of the bad guy, this may prove to be a difficult task. However, children have a natural inclination to test limits in order to discover where the boundaries of society are set, which contributes to their tendency to act aggressively. In order to establish these boundaries, a parent must do it in a manner that is forceful and unwavering. Even if the prospect of doing so may not appeal to you, consider the following. If kids do not learn these things from a parent who loves and understands them, they will learn them in a manner later on that is likely to include less love and understanding. Now, let's take a look at 3 important techniques for effective parenting. The first option is to restrict the number of regulations. When there are too many restrictions, it makes for frustrated children who are continually running into obstacles. Therefore, keep everything simple and straightforward by adhering to a couple of fundamental rules, such as don't bite, kick, or punch anyone, unless you have to in self-defense. The second step is to employ the least amount of force possible. When consequences are not made apparent, it is impossible to apply discipline in an effective and equitable manner. The punishment should also fit the offense, which implies that it should only be as severe as is required for a youngster to learn not to breach the rule again, and should not be any more severe than that. A dissatisfied expression is sometimes all that is required, while other times it may be enough to go a week without playing video games. The third group is expected to arrive in pairs. Because children are perceptive and will attempt to achieve their goals by pitting one parent against the other, it is essential for families to present a united front. Additionally, it is inevitable for a parent to make errors, but if you have a spouse who is supportive of you and your parenting, you will be in a better position to recognize and correct those mistakes. Key point 6. The world is filled with injustices, but we should not blame others for our lot in life. There is no use in sugarcoating the truth. The world is fraught with difficulties and sorrow, but this should not lead one to give up hope. Despite this, several people throughout history have held the belief that life is so harsh and unjust that extreme measures are occasionally necessary. Tolstoy, a Russian novelist, viewed life as being so terribly unfair that he believed there were only 4 acceptable ways to deal with it: to remain ignorant like a child, to seek hedonistic pleasure, to commit suicide, or to persevere in spite of everything. In his article titled A Confession, Tolstoy evaluated various perspectives and came to the conclusion that the most honest reaction would be suicide, while continuing to struggle would be a proof of his weakness and inability to take the necessary decision. Others have responded in a similar manner, but have decided to take the lives of others along with their own, in acts that are known as murder-suicides, and which include the school shootings at Sandy Hook and Columbine. By the time June of 2016 rolled around, there had been a total of 1,000 shootings in the United States during the previous 1,260 days. In most of these incidents, the shooter had murdered 4 or more people before turning the gun on themselves. But despite Tolstoy's pessimistic outlook on the world, you shouldn't blame the outside world for your misfortunes. This is true regardless of how badly you've been wronged or how harsh and unfair you feel life to be. Take responsibility for your own life before passing judgment on the rest of the world. This is the essence of the 6th rule for life, which stipulates that you should do so before passing judgment on the rest of the world. Another Russian author, Alexei Solzhenitsyn, thought that it was possible to defy the cruelties of life, even when such cruelties were directed on oneself. He said this in one of his works. Solzhenitsyn was a communist who participated in the resistance movement against the Nazis during World War II. Despite the fact that he fought against the Nazis, he was incarcerated by his own state when the war was over. While he was serving his term in a Russian gulag, he received the devastating news that he had cancer. As if that wasn't horrible enough. But despite all that had happened to him, Solzhenitsyn did not blame the outside world for the way his life turned become. He admitted that he had been a supporter of the Communist Party, which was responsible for his imprisonment, and he resolved to make the most of the time he had left by making a positive and significant contribution to the world. One of the things that he did was write a book called The Gulag Archipelago. In it, he detailed the history of the Soviet labor camps that he had personally seen, and also delivered a harsh indictment of those camps. The book was a significant contributor to the eradication of any remaining support for Stalin's version of communism in intellectual circles all over the world. Key point 7. Sacrifice can be a meaningful act, and we should seek meaning over immediate pleasures. Have you ever heard the one about the monkey that tried to get his hand into the cookie jar, but was caught? There was a cookie that was left inside of an open jar, and the aperture of the jar was just big enough for the monkey's hand to fit inside of it. However, the opening of the jar was not big enough for the monkey's fist to come out of the jar with the treat still inside of it. Therefore, if he persevered on attempting to keep hold of his treat, he would find himself in a difficult situation. The lesson to be learned here is that one must pay the price for their greed. The monkey ended up being caught as a result of his inability to just let go of the cookie. In what ways is this dissimilar to how humans behave? How many individuals do things every day that provide them joy but aren't always in their best interests? And how many of them are hesitant to make the sacrifices that would be in their own best interests? One of the unintended consequences of having the perspective that the world is a bottomless pit of misery is that it makes it exceptionally simple to rationalize living a life centered on fleeting pleasures as a means of making one's existence more bearable. In addition to this, if anything brings you joy, then it can't be that horrible, can it? This is the reasoning behind actions like as binge eating and drinking, using drugs, engaging in sexual depravity, and other forms of self-harm. Sacrifice, of the sort that results in greater things in the future as a result of giving up something in the here and now, is the opposite side of this issue. This practice dates back to ancient times, when communities would store food either to ensure their survival during the colder months, or to support members of the group who were unable to hunt or cultivate. Another subject that is covered extensively in the Bible is this one. When God casts Adam and Eve out of paradise, it is made abundantly plain that the original sin that they committed is the root cause of the difficult and brutal existence that everyone must endure. However, the suffering we go through in this life is the sacrifice we have to make in order to be able to revel in the pleasures of the hereafter. This gets us to the seventh guideline, which is to prioritize the pursuit of significant objectives over the satisfaction of immediate desires. You would believe that this is a straightforward notion, and one that the vast majority of people currently engage in. In the end, we make the decision to get up early, get to the office, and put in long hours, so that we may reward ourselves with a trip to the beach or other leisure activity later on. But this extends beyond making a sacrifice for your own personal benefit. There are large things as well as tiny things that we may give for the larger good, and the greater the sacrifice, the more gratifying it may be in the end. Consider the lotus flower, it could be of some assistance. This plant begins its existence in the bottom of a lake, and as it grows, it makes its way up through the murky water, until it finally bursts through the surface of the water and flowers in the light of the sun. To put it another way, if you commit to something and are willing to give up things along the way to achieve your objective, you will be rewarded. Key point 8. Lies are a common tool of self-deception, but we should strive toward truthful living. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche had the belief that the capacity of a person to withstand unadulterated truth was a good indicator of how strong their soul was. Even though the truth is sometimes seen as a valued asset in our society, the fact remains that we frequently engage in lying. One of the primary reasons we tell lies to both ourselves and to other people is in order to acquire what it is that we believe we desire. These are what Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler referred to as life lies, and they are defined as the things that we'll do and say in order to make a goal that hasn't been well thought through into reality. You may, for instance, envisage yourself spending your retirement on a deserted beach in Mexico, sipping margaritas from an endless supply. This could be your ideal retirement scenario. This sort of objective may be so alluring that you will continue to deceive yourself into thinking that it's attainable, even as more and more things occur that make it more and more unlikely that you will achieve it. You could even develop sensitivities to the sun, sand, and alcohol, but you will continue to deceive yourself about this ideal plan, despite the fact that it is not actually a plan at all. Given that you have not outlined any specific actions that could be taken in order to bring it closer to becoming a reality, these kind of misconceptions frequently go hand in hand with our capacity to trick ourselves into believing that we already know everything that there is to know about a subject. This is a particularly dumb viewpoint to adopt, since it turns off our natural urge to learn and develop as individuals. But things may go from bad to worse when a person chooses to live their entire life in denial of the reality and continues to tell themselves lies. In the epic poem Paradise Lost by John Milton, Lucifer is presented as a sensible figure, but one who gets too haughty and obsessed with his gifts. This causes him and his followers to be cast out of paradise for having the audacity to contradict the ultimate truth that God possesses. This establishes rule number 8, which is to refrain from lying and always tell the truth. You don't have to abandon any of your lofty objectives, but you should be open to making adjustments in order to ensure that your targets are attainable and in line with reality. Consequently, as your knowledge and perspective of the world evolve, so too should your objectives. And if your life is going in the wrong direction, it may be time to question the present truth that you are adhering to, the one that has you feeling helpless, rejected, or useless, and to reaffirm the truth that is unique to you, so that you may get your life back on track. Key point 9. Conversations are an opportunity to learn and grow, not compete. Socrates, an ancient Greek philosopher, is still widely regarded as one of the brightest individuals to have ever lived, even though he has been dead for thousands of years. His conviction that the only thing he could say for definite was that he knew nothing served as a motivating factor in both the discussions he had and the fact that he was always willing to learn new things. This is one of the reasons why this is the case. When you participate in true communication, it should be a comparable process to thinking. When you give anything some thought, you are simply listening to yourself as you investigate both sides of a problem or question. Therefore, in a manner, you are constructing your own internal dialogue, which can be tough, since you need to authentically reflect both viewpoints while still being objective in your conclusion. However, you are doing this by establishing your own internal dialogue. This is one main reason why individuals communicate to each other, so that they may more readily present the two sides of an issue and come to a resolution. Even young children are capable of doing this. If one youngster thinks it would be exciting to play on top of a roof, they may mention this idea to a buddy, who will then warn them of the potential risks of following through with this plan. The subsequent talk gives the youngster who had the initial idea the opportunity to take in the new viewpoint, examine the likelihood that someone would trip and damage themselves, and ideally come to the conclusion that will be best for everyone involved. However, talks seldom progress in this manner at all. Instead, one person or possibly both persons will refuse to listen and regard the conversation as a fight they need to win in order to justify their beliefs. So, rather of listening what the other person has to say, they'll be thinking about what to say next, or act like it's a game of one-upping each other. Because of this, the 9th guideline is to listen to what other people have to say while doing so with the assumption that you can learn something from them. One simple strategy that might help you become a more engaging conversationalist is to really listen to what the other person has to say, and then verbally explain or restate what they have just stated. This has many purposes. It helps to ensure that you have heard things accurately, while also helping it stick in your memory. It also minimizes the probability that you would distort or oversimplify items, in order to make them fit your side of the debate. It may be unpleasant to take in knowledge that means you have to adjust your notions and prejudices, just as it can be painful to be confronted with the truth at times. However, you must accept that this is the price you must pay, in order to participate in the marvelous process of learning and developing. Key point 10. The complexity of life should be confronted with clear and precise language. Even though life is a vast and intricate tapestry, most of the time we only focus on the individual components that are directly relevant to us. When you are out walking and you come across an apple that has fallen to the ground, the branch, tree, roots, and soil that were all related to it before it fell are generally not things that cross your mind. The reason for this is that we have a tendency to only identify or pay attention to things that are either beneficial to us, or that go in the way of us doing what we want to do. The apple, which stands for nourishment and provision, captures our attention for this reason. However, because the tree and the soil are of little help to us in meeting our requirements, we do not take them into account. The world is simply too complicated for it to be possible, so the mind simplifies things and makes it simpler for us to go on with our lives. Of course, we can't think of everything all the time, and that's perfectly okay. On the other hand, every once in a while, something will take place that completely alters our perspective of the world and makes everything appear to be in disarray. Rule 10 emphasizes the need of using language that is clear and unambiguous. How exactly does this assist? Think about the word vehicle for a moment. You are aware of what an automobile is, aren't you? It is a mode of transportation that can take you from location A to location B. Do you know the specific methods in which an automobile functions in the event that it breaks down midway between point A and point B? Are you able to open the hood and repair this complicated piece of machinery? When your automobile breaks down, you probably experience primordial inclinations to curse at it, and maybe even kick it, since it's not a simple thing like it used to be. There's a strong probability that you do this. This is what occurs when things grow complicated and chaotic. Therefore, in order to recover, you need to re-establish order by expressing what went wrong in a clear and specific manner. Only then will you be able to heal. When your body breaks down and you get sick, the same thing needs to happen in order for you to recover. You need to be specific about the symptoms you're experiencing when you visit the doctor, since there might be any number of issues going on. Is it a fever, or do you have a pain in your stomach? Did you notice a change in your symptoms after you ate something? What did that mean? You can bring some order back into the situation and take steps toward feeling better if you are exact. Your interactions may function more smoothly as a result of your use of precise language as well. Is there something that your partner does that drives you crazy, like when they don't clean up after themselves? The sooner you tell them the truth and provide them accurate information, the simpler your life will be. Key point 11. There are bad and oppressive men, but we must avoid suppressing human nature. The author of George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier comes to the conclusion that socialism was recruiting followers in England, not out of sympathy for the awful conditions that miners were enduring, but out of hatred for those who were wealthy and powerful. This is stated in the novel's conclusion. Even in modern times, sentiments regarding the male-dominated authority that is known as the patriarchy remain mostly unchanged. Max Horkheimer, a member of the Marxist-influenced Frankfurt School and a supporter of something called critical theory, is one significant source that contributes to this contempt for the patriarchy. He believed that education and intellectualism should be focused on social change, and rather than working to empower women, it should seek to combat and destroy the powerful oppressors in a culture, that is, the ruling males. He believed that this would be the most effective use of education and intellectualism. Similarly, the deconstruction of a macho culture is frequently cited as the most effective route of political action in contemporary humanities classes taught all over the world. Everything is about destroying rather than mending or producing, and the author claims that this has resulted in an indignation focused towards male behavior that has a tendency to be too harsh and lacking in perspective. For instance, a great number of male students are often subjected to harsh charges of being a member of the patriarchy. However, the way toward righteous reform should not require treating every guy as though he is potentially guilty of sex offenses. In spite of the fact that many men have engaged in appalling behavior throughout history, the author contends that men have also made positive use of their naturally aggressive attitudes by, for example, participating in healthy competition, exploring dangerous areas, and achieving much-needed advancement. The author is brought back to images of people skating. Amazing skateboarders were seen displaying an admirable lack of fear and a desire to embrace danger outside of some of the buildings on the University of Toronto campus. But after that, local officials came to the conclusion that skateboarding should be banned on the campus. This leads us to rule number 11. You are not allowed to harass young kids who are skating. It is impossible for us to set norms that go counter to the fundamental essence of who we are as individuals. Our regulations should most certainly serve to safeguard us, but they shouldn't do it in a manner that stifles the admirable characteristics that people possess. We have actually seen a dramatized narrative that does a very decent job of depicting what might occur when males are dispossessed of their manhood. Aggression may therefore become a forbidden fruit that reveals itself in fascist inclinations, as the tale that is presented to us in Fight Club demonstrates for us. Emasculation has prompted a number of responses in the actual world, one of which being the recent rise of the right-wing political movement. The fact of the matter is that mothers do not want their sons to grow up without the opportunity to figure things out for themselves and be self-sufficient. He makes the assumption that every boy has a mother, and that no mother in her right mind would wish to raise a dependent man-child. Key point 12. Life is hard and full of sorrow, so it's important to celebrate the small joys in life. Have you ever been responsible for the care of an ill person? It has the potential to be one of the more challenging obstacles in life. Since she was 6 years old, the author's daughter has been struggling with severe arthritis on a daily basis. She has been in chronic discomfort, which has required her to have numerous injections, as well as many surgeries for the replacement of her joints. If you had a daughter and she were in this circumstance, you could believe that life is unjust. However, it is crucial to understand that the difficult times, such as pain, suffering, and grief, are what give the happy times their significance. Take, for example, Superman. Almost immediately after his debut, this character skyrocketed to the top of the popularity charts. However, the authors of the comic book kept giving him new powers until he was so powerful that he was almost impossible to defeat. Naturally, readers are beginning to find him to be rather dull. The wins that Superman achieves are meaningless if there is no possibility of peril. And in the same way, positive experiences would be devoid of significance if we did not first have to persevere through adversity and endure pain before we could enjoy them. Rule 12 emphasizes making the most of even the most minute pleasures that life has to give. For this reason, it is essential to adhere to it. If you follow this guideline, you will be sure to enjoy life to the fullest and be grateful for every opportunity and blessing that comes your way. You will also be certain to see yourself through the difficult times, even if they last for an extended period of time. The author's daughter endured years of agony and anguish, until locating a new physiotherapist who assisted her in regaining her mobility, returning to a degree of normalcy, and significantly reducing the amount of pain she experienced. There is a possibility that there could be further difficulties in the future, but for the time being, they are both content to appreciate the progress that has been made. This is the finest attitude to have. It's the sort that makes you stop what you are doing and pet a cat when you see one on the sidewalk. This is the best attitude to have. Keep in mind that there can be no light of day without the darkness of night, just as there can be no order without the disorder that turmoil brings. There is an element of sorrow in our life, but it is also what gives purpose to our tenacity, and what makes the times of serenity so satisfying. Concluding remarks. We have come to the end of this book review. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Now let's proceed to talk about the most important takeaway from this book is: getting through life is a never-ending battle that's littered with tests and ordeals, and if there's one thing that's certain, it's that there will almost certainly be more challenges in store for you in the near future. However, despite the ephemeral nature of these happy and beautiful moments, there is still beauty and joy to be discovered. You have nothing to lose by giving it your all, acting honestly and truthfully, and avoiding being proud and self-centered. It is essential that you accept responsibility for your own lot in life, and do not place the blame for your failings on other people or the outside world. In the end, the only person who can make changes to your life is you. Directions for taking action. Consider asking yourself, in what way did I go wrong? You might not agree with the response, but accepting it will help you develop as a person and remain honest. If you make it a habit to check in with yourself with this question on a regular basis, you'll be able to experience the fulfillment that comes with advancing in your pursuit to become a better person on a daily basis. Thanks for listening to the end. Please like and subscribe to our channel.